All right, we'll go ahead and call the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting to order at the RSW Regional Jail. It's February 28, 1 p.m. Welcome, everybody. I think we're good on introductions and so forth. First item is adoption of the minutes for January 24th. Any changes?
Move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Superintendent's report, Russ.
Sure. Average daily population, Rappahannock with 24 at 6.5%, Shenandoah with 159 at 43%, excuse me, Warren County with 187 at 50.5%. Total member jurisdiction ADP is 370. We have 5 contract vets from Prince William, 67 from Page County, and 31 from Culpeper. Total facility ADP 473. Just to kind of, for next month, you're going to see a substantial increase in Page County contract beds. We're probably somewhere between 95 and 100 with them now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
How much space is available? I mean,
We're pretty much capped. So
What is their max population at their current jail?
I don't know.
not
If
enough.
I had to guess,
Right.
I think it's right about 80. I
Really?
think that's what they've kept there in the past.
They know.
And, I mean, do they have capability to double bunk or do anything like that?
That probably.
Yeah, that is.
That's probably is double, okay.
They were utilizing Middle River Regional Jail. That is now stopped, I believe, almost completely, and what they had there has been transferred here.
Okay. So it must be male and female. I think at one point it was mostly kind of female, wasn't it, or not? Or
We had a blend before.
mix?
Yeah,
Okay.
we did.
All right.
And they're paying medical separate.
They did.
And transportation, I think, right?
If we do anything.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Sorry.
That's right. Vacancies, we have 28 officer vacancies. This does include the 8 positions held for savings. We have 2 LPN vacancies and 1 nursing director vacancy. We do have a person in background on the nursing director, and then we also had another, someone also interested in that position as well, so hopefully we're going to get that filled. Facility grounds and maintenance, RSW workforce. Has done a couple different projects, building extensions for a dump trailer that was recently purchased, doing additional cleanup around the area with the other equipment that we have in the facility. They made programs and services. Workforce picked up 142 bags of litter along Airport Road and Route 340 in Warren County this month, between February 14th and 15th. And then RSW Workforce continued to work at Shenandoah County Parks and Rec to assist with clearing the brush and general landscaping. There's some pictures. Also, there's some pictures from the work that's being done at Rappahannock County Park as well. So they've been busy throughout the winter season, around cutting grass, doing a lot of other cleanup for different county parks and services.
Okay, the statistics are also attached. Does anybody have any questions for Russ on that? Okay, financial report, Stephanie.
Just under $400,000 was received from the Compensation Board in January for the December 2018 salaries and benefits reimbursement, of which $57,000 was for vacancy savings. Contract bed rental billing for December 2018 and January 19 was as follows. It was $33,000 in December for Culpeper and $31,000 in January for Culpeper. $58,000 in December for Page, $72,000 in January for Page, which reflects, as Russ said, the numbers increasing for Page County. And it was $8,000 in December for Prince William and $5,000 in January for Prince William. Total bed rental revenue year-to-date for FY19, including revenue from medical, housing, commissary, and telephone fees, is at $785,000. January marks 58% of the year. Expenditures are at almost 55% used, and revenue is at almost 69% realized.
So the number with Paige, hey, how are you? Welcome.
Thank you.
The number with Paige here, when did the numbers actually, you think, go up? Like midway?
2.5 weeks ago, maybe.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Any questions for Stephanie? All right, FY 2020 budget.
I have a couple of notes on what has changed since it was presented to you guys. It hasn't been much. The change in revenue is that, as you guys saw, the comp board increased their funding for raises as of July to 3% rather than 2%. So that has been changed as funding, and in the options on the summary page, I changed it to just a 3% increase, and then our option to change the minimum correctional officer salary instead of having 2 and 2.5%, since the comp board have changed theirs to 3. Included in expenditures, we've added a couple of capital expenses for next year, one of which was $100,000 for bulletproof vests for the facility, a portion of which we would get back due to a grant that we're working on.
It should be 50% reimbursable. It's the not the ECGS, Bureau of Justice grant that's been around for several years now. Most of the localities participate in that. So we are signed up. We are going to submit for that grant if we're approved to move forward with this. The estimates that we've received, we've gotten quotes back from 3 different contractors that provide vests under the state contract. The best number that we have is actually slightly lower than that, but we wanted to make sure that we had, in case something fell through from the time we got those quotes or something changed, we had a little bit of buffer. But it looks like it should be the total cost for the localities around $50,000 once we get those monies back from the grant. This is new equipment that we've never had before. Each officer would be issued a vest that serves dual purpose of ballistic and staff rating, which in our environment is important.
So currently, staff does not wear bulletproof vests?
We don't have any.
Okay, okay.
We don't have any. We've never had that equipment, so this is.
So if I understand it right, it's total purchase 100,000, possibly 50 in a grant. Is that what you're looking at?
Right.
Okay.
What's the lifespan?
5 years. So it is a capital item because they are supposed to be replaced usually around every 5 years.
Now, obviously, we have turnover, so are they, you might be able to reuse them, or it's personally fit and you?
They are fitted, but there are sizes. They're doing the fittings to get people in the appropriate sizes. So there could be the ability to reissue as long as it's still serviceable. But you never know until you have the person and what you have sitting in the pool from some of the. So.
And if they're sitting in the closet unused for 5 years, you think they still have a lifespan after that?
I don't know. That would be a question for that particular manufacturer at best. What causes that to deteriorate? I don't know if it's just time or if it's different.
Last question, if we have additional vacancy savings next year, is that something we get reimbursed on with those funds as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And these
Yeah,
vests are worn under the shirt?
No, they're actually,
On the
we did
outside.
the exterior in hopes that if we did reissue, then you've got fewer problems there.
Okay,
Plus with the exterior carrier, they have the ability to carry some of the
Right.
equipment that they carry on their waist on their
yep.
vest, which is good for the officer. It gets a lot of that weight and stuff off of them that they carry. Not that
So you don't have to change this shirt?
No.
All of the capital, $250,000, which 50 is potentially grant funded, is shown to come from in-year revenue? And
Sorry,
not
sorry.
capital fund balance or anything?
For the
The entire list of capital, which is 100 for the vest, 95 for the vehicles, and 24.
I guess that really depends. Right now, we have it in this year's budget.
It's in the annual operating.
It's in the annual operating budget. I mean, since we do have a balance in the capital, some of it could be pulled from there, but that would be
Right.
how you would like.
Right now, it's shown
Right.
it's coming from operating funds.
Right. None of this is a replacement. They're all new, pieces of equipment. So I don't know if that makes a difference or not. How you'd like to utilize the funds.
You mentioned something about change to minimum. I'm not following what that means.
Change the minimum starting salary for officers to increase it so that we're competitive with the other jurisdictions in the area.
Okay,
So it'd be raising the minimum from 38 to
41 to
60, which is what the other localities are starting at.
Turn
That's
38
more
what?
than
What's the?
ours, I
30,
think.
38.
38,225.
Yeah, 38,
That's current.
that's
Mhm.
current. At the last meeting, there was discussion with the sheriffs as to what they were paying.
Mhm.
And more than likely, you know, if the 3% goes through, we're still gonna be behind the sheriffs, we're still gonna be behind the other, our fellow sister agency in Winchester, they're, because of their pay raises, we're probably still gonna be slightly behind them, but it does keep us competitive.
So this bleeds into the conversation on vacancies.
If you adjust the starting on a correctional officer, how does that affect, say, the next in charge,
Did we
the
take,
next position?
basically you're asking, did we take care of compression and?
Yeah,
did we-
and then what about, say, a new correctional officer that was hired last year? And now you're gonna bring someone in at 41, and they're making whatever you all said it was.
When these numbers are based upon addressing all those compression issues, so their salaries would be adjusted so that they would not be behind what the new starting officer would be.
Okay.
I think that was one of the questions in the previous meeting, had compression been taken care of, and we did. So we won't have to come back to you later and go, well, we've got morale problems because I've got brand new officers making more money than somebody else. We addressed those issues.
The last time we made the adjustment was 2 years ago. Where did you arrive at 41, whatever it is, 462?
The starting salaries of the other sheriff's offices and the other agencies that we looked at, we actually did a salary comparison. We had those numbers up previously. It was the last meeting. I'm sorry, I don't have them in front of me. That's where that number came from. So we basically, where they're at, where we thought they would be at with the pay raise, and tried to come up with a dollar amount. But now with the 3%, they're probably going to be higher than that, but it still gets us close.
I know,
Just like $380,000. Looks like the difference between the 3% change column and the change to minimum column.
For locality contributions, yes.
84, how much?
Yeah, if we were to give a 3% increase, it would be 8 million would be the locality contributions. And if we're to change the correctional officer minimum, it would be 8.4 million.
So it's an additional
It's 380.
380. And I believe what we do in Shenandoah County is they're hired at a number, and I don't know off the top of my head, I think it's around 37, I think. And then after 1 year, it goes up to the higher number. Is that a possibility to do something along that line?
The problem we're having is getting people in the door to begin with. So we're not doing any kind of step increase because you're starting them lower and then bringing them higher because we got to get them to the door first. So we're trying to make sure we're being competitive with that open salary to get people in the door. That's really where we're having problems. I mean, our applications are for correctional officer positions are back down to, I didn't report anybody in the background at this time, so we're not getting them. So we've got to do something to try to be competitive because NRADCs, their starting is already at 40, I believe, and they're going to be more, and that's who we're competing against, not just and we're competing against the sheriff's offices as well. We're losing people to them, and competing against their vacancies. They all have vacancies, so if we're paying less, we're definitely not going to be. Why would you come here?
Mhm.
So, bleeding over to the other agenda item, but your chart background data shows you going from 16 vacancies up to 28 over the course of a year.
Right.
And that's going to put in jeopardy our ability to rent bid space to others,
Absolutely.
which is important.
Right. I mean, we're even though it's increasing the budget by what, would you say 380,000?
We're covering that.
We're
You're covering it.
covering it and way then some. So,
Mhm.
and if we can get more people, I still have 120 beds that we could fill
Right.
if we had more staff. So,
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
again, more revenue that would just cover those costs. But
I'm leery of what this chart looks like over the next 6 and 12
Right.
months.
Right.
I feel like we need to
We're
do
always,
something to change the trend.
we're always gonna have turnover in this line of work,
Sure.
it's just normal. But, so that's why it's even more important to be able to be competitive on the recruitment side, to keep backfilling those people as they move on to law enforcement or whatever they decide to do.
Obviously, next FMP, which is just ahead of the March, and normally we would adopt the budget. We're still missing the health insurance piece. I'd say leave everything in. I think, you know, I think we've got to get into the 40s, because that first number, like you said, Russ, this 3% is only going to take you to like 39.4 or so. You know, you've got to get close, or we're not going to close the gap and fill some of these positions. So if everybody else is giving 3%, we gain no ground. So I'd say let's look at going to that minimum, at least in the draft budget. Let's plug in the health insurance numbers, and we can make a final vote and recommendation to the full authority board at our March meeting.
Right, and we have a placeholder in here of 15% increase in the insurance, health insurance, because we're anticipating an increase.
Okay.
We may not have that, it may be more, but there is a 15% placeholder as an increase in the health insurance, because we didn't want it to come as a shock
So that-
if it's something
Okay.
larger
That's
than that.
good.
How much was that?
I'm not sure exactly how much it is. I think it took it from like 1.5 to 1.7 or something of that nature. I'm not sure exactly off the top of my head. I just know we budgeted for a 15% increase.
Is there
just
any
in
interest
case.
in pulling any money from the capital fund? The balance or anything?
Well, you know, I know we're
400.
behind our
I think we're only about, what, $400,000?
$400,000 is what we're
Probably not.
Is what we had in reserve is only
Yeah.
400.
408,000.
Yeah, I think if we had, you know, $1.5 million or so, we could look at doing something like that.
And I know at the last meeting, we had approved to move money to the capital account, but I haven't because of the review from
That's right.
Davenport, that all those numbers were changing. So
So we're currently at 480.
we're 408, 408,000.
Okay. All right. Any more questions on budget?
Yeah, I've got a couple more.
Go ahead, sorry,
Okay.
I'll let you.
The other thing that was added as an expense in this version of the budget was an additional $50,000 for an additional position from Northwestern Community Services Board. Russ spoke with them and
And that's being driven by House Bill, I believe it's in 1942, which is going to require local jails to have dedicated staff to provide reentry kind of services. So I got it, immediately got in touch with, the community service board, said, hey, if we do this position, how much is it going to cost? So with benefits and everything, it's looking around $50,000. There was another question that came up as far as funding for the community service board. I think they had came back to the localities and asked for additional money for jail funding.
Is that the way your budget was, their request, that it didn't actually indicate was for RSW Jail?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
And,
Ours did.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
so actually I had some conversations, had a meeting yesterday, and that was kind of a mistake on their part.
Okay.
All the funding that they need is already coming from here except for this additional position.
Okay.
So we didn't need to ask for any more money, and they really didn't intend to ask for more money from you guys. So
Okay.
you might want to look at your budgets
Clarify
and just
that.
make sure.
Okay.
and then the computers, Russ.
Correct. All of our existing operating systems are running on Windows 7. Of course, its end of life is I think it's here in the
A year
next.
ago? Yeah.
Yeah. So the PCs that we have, we cannot upgrade the software to Windows 10 or they won't function, so we've got to buy new PCs. So we just got the quote on that, and that's $30,000 to replace all the PCs that we have that are facing public, domain or internet. That's what it's really critical to make that update. So we do have that number of 30. We didn't add it to this budget. We didn't know if we wanted to take excess revenue that we have from this year and go ahead and start purchasing those, or how the authority would like for us to handle that.
Does that include the computers that you all use with the cameras and so forth, or is those strictly the computers like finance and
We,
personnel,
we,
payroll, whatever?
we have looked at, there's a couple of the systems, not necessarily security, but on the like for our Acorn system, which is the plumbing system, that system was calculated into that, replacing that one. We don't have a number on the security. The security side doesn't, it doesn't touch the internet. It's not public facing. So in theory, no, we don't need to upgrade them because of the Windows 10 change. At some point, we probably will, but it doesn't look like we need to do that yet.
Okay.
And if we did, it's you know, I think we're talking 15 stations, so it's not as much money. I'll say.
What do you all think about him using the current?
I tried to take care of the current budget, so not to do it for next year.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, we
Any
didn't budget
motion-
for it, so it's gonna
motion
push
there?
that line item over
Yeah.
budget, but we do have the
And
funds.
we'll get that straightened out at the end of this
You want
meeting.
to go ahead and have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. What else you want to spend there, Stephanie?
That's all I have. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Now we're on to 2018 true-up discussion. We will bring back the 2020 budget at next month's meeting.
Hopefully we have our
Hopefully we'll have
insurance
your health
rates.
insurance.
I like to think we'll have the health insurance rates by then.
And we're going to welcome Ted. Thank you for being here.
Gary's got a quick question. Do we want to see more than one column? Could you take one and maybe split the difference between the 41
Slide it in here.
and 63 and what it would be with the 3%? Maybe one of those.
That'll be a good spot because you're not doing most questions.
With the 3%, would you say 3% goes to?
It's going to leave, it'll be about $2,000 difference, I think. I think it'll, 3% will be about 100 or so, so it'll put you at 39, 34.
I believe it was 39 something.
Yeah.
I believe.
41.
Just leave it, we'll leave it the way it is for now. No, that's fine.
Ready? I've got my colleague, Mitch Bergoglio, on the phone here as well. Mitch, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Mitch.
All right, so, got something I can pass
Ring
around. There are two little typos, not in any numbers, but in reference to a fiscal year that I printed off the wrong version. I apologize, but you county administrators have the correct version in your inbox from Mitch the other day. So we've put some information together and have had conversations with each of the county administrators along the way and trying to get something pulled together that would be helpful in this discussion. And I guess I just want to say at the outset, this is not necessarily the way it has to be done or must be done or should be done. It's sort of our approach or effort to try to break it down into an easy to understand process and couple of calculations that might be helpful. So if you look at page 1, there are page numbers in the lower right corner. What we've got here is the historical data on average daily population, and across the top you've got Rappahannock-Shenandoah-Warren County and the total. Really, when you get down to the bottom section of this is the 3-year rolling average, which is the basis upon which a lot of the budgeting and true-up is done. One of the little typos I've got is in the very bottom right-hand corner. It says FY 2028. That should be FY 18. I apologize. So when you look at that bottom section, line 21, you'll see 2018. And these are the 3-year rolling average percentages based on 16, 17, and 18. And out to the right, we've shown you the budgets that are developed with each of those 3-year rolling averages. So in other words, the 3-year rolling average that ended in 15 was what was used to develop the FY17 budget. The 3-year average that ended in 16 was for the 18 budget. And so we come forward to the 3-year rolling average that ends in fiscal 18, line 21, is what you're using to develop the 2020 budget. Okay? And then we've also shown you what that 3-year rolling average is used in the true-up. What true-up is it used for? So we are dealing with a 3-year rolling average of FY18 right now, which is the basis upon which you're building your FY20 budget, and it's also the numbers we're using to true up FY18. Okay? So just, let's go to the next page. It's sort of a progression that I hope makes sense on page 2. What we're dealing with is a corrected budget. I believe there was a corrected budget in 18 where you went back and accounted for about 600 and some thousand. And so when you look at that top third of this page through line 6, you will notice that the fourth quarter is larger than the first 3 quarters. That's, I believe, the result of the correction that was done in the budget. So this is the 18 budgeted payments by locality, and we're using under column A the FY16 3-year average. That's really the 3 years being 14, 15, and 16. Okay? 609, 34.29, and 59.62. And so as you go across, you'll see what the quarterly payments are and what the annual payments are based on each locality at those percentages, and it all rolls up to 7.7 million. That was the corrected budget. Okay? The middle of the page, this is the second and final typo, where it says FY18 there under column A. That should be FY16. I apologize. The numbers don't change. The actual payments that were made in fiscal 18, we go across and you'll see that the sum at the end of the year was $6,825,000. Okay? And those payments were made according to those FY16 percentages, the same percentages that you used to develop the budget. And at the very bottom, the difference is $922,000, which was your FY17 true-up amount. Okay? And that $922,000 was allocated to each of the 3 members according to the FY17 3-year rolling average. That is the 3 years, 15, 16, and 17. Okay? So you've got a budget based on FY16 3-year rolling average. You've got actual payments that were made based on that same FY16 3-year rolling average. And the difference is what was returned back or credited to each of you as part of the FY17 true-up, which would have happened about this time last year. Okay? With me? All right, so then we go to page 3, and you start at the top, and this is restating something you've seen, right? So we're restating, okay, here are the budgeted payments for FY18 using the FY16 3-year rolling average all the way across under column F as the total. Then you got your credits, which was the 17 true-up, and the net under column H. So you've seen that. We just chatted about that. All right, then you go to the middle of the page, and this is now pulling in the 3-year rolling average that ends in 18. So fiscal year 16, 17, 18, we're calculating the 3-year rolling average. Rappahannock's at 5%, a little over 5, Shenandoah at 40, Warren at 54. So we have the same gross and net budget as we originally or corrected budget, right? It's the same 7.7 million with the return of the 17 true-up for a net of 6.8, but they have been reallocated based upon the FY18 rolling 3-year rolling average. Okay, so we have the same gross dollars, but what you've got is you've got a difference in each of the 3 member jurisdictions in what they should have paid based on actual usage, right? So Rappahannock was budgeted to use 6.09%, but in reality they used 5.26. Shenandoah was budgeted at 34.29. In reality they used 40.26. and Warren was budgeted at 59.6 and used 54. So we have at the very bottom reallocated the payments in FY18 to account for the most current 3-year rolling average of per diems. And stop me anywhere there's a question or a concern or
Okay.
a
So we didn't know that it was 40.26 until last month.
until very recently.
And you jumped from 34.29 to 40.26, totally eliminating 37.98, and I'm referring to Shenandoah County only. The 37.98 was used for FY19,
Which is what we're currently
the
using.
current year.
Right, and that should have been used to do the true up last year.
Okay, so if we're going to adjust it for this year, should we go back and adjust all of the previous years? Because that's not the way it was done.
Yeah, I don't know, I think that's a
And,
different discussion for
Okay.
y'all. I don't have an opinion on that. I don't honestly know exactly how it's been done every year. And I would say if you want to go back, that's certainly.
well, the model that was used and was by the auditors. That's the model that was used to calculate the true up. It wasn't done mid-year when we find out. That number was used for the next year's proposed budget.
It's like right now, we're using really last year's for next year's budget.
It's always a year behind. I guess you could say a year behind.
Until we get through June 30 this year, and then that's your true up for next year, right?
So the risk there is that if you have a longer period between the percentage usage that is used for the budget and the true up, then there's the greater change that you may see between budget and actual. And so that's why I argue that we should be budgeting for FY20 with the absolute latest information available, which would be through part of 19, so that when we get to the true up, it will be closer to reality, and the change will be smaller.
And that would make sense if that's what we would have done from the very beginning, but we did not. That's not how it was done. And even when Davenport did the initial picking up the local jails averages, what percentage, because we started off at 36%, dropped to 32.38, and then from there on, I mean, we've continued to go up, which is
The numbers
because
that
of
were
the ADB.
used the annual jail report, which were based on fiscal year, if I remember correctly. That's why the fiscal year was picked, because they looked at the previous years to come up with that rolling 3-year average. And the easiest piece of data was to use the state's comparative report and move that forward. So, yeah, I think the agreement just says year, it doesn't say calendar year, fiscal year. So I think that's something that the full board could certainly change. You're saying, Gary, like use calendar year 16, calendar year 17, calendar year 18. That would cover you through December 31st, so your data really would only be 2 months old, 6 months old when your new budget kicks in July 1. Is that pretty much what you're saying? It does say fiscal year, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
For which?
And you can turn it, if
Payments
you
from
start
each member
using
shall be
percentages
adjusted
for
into each
calendar
fiscal
year,
year based
but our
on
money's based on
usage
fiscal
received
year,
in
then
3
that's gonna
years.
get
That's
really
the year
confusing
that
during
doesn't
the
have
audit.
3 years. It doesn't say
See, it
fiscal.
doesn't say fiscal order.
So our
Right,
budget for the
right,
fiscal
yeah.
year is based on usage for the last 3 years. So, I mean, that's a rolling 3 years. I
Well,
want there to
Shannon-
be as little change in the true-up as possible, because none of us want to face a significant change in our contribution.
I understand that, but Shenandoah County, according to this chart, stands to lose the most. And I guess where I'm concerned is, not only is that a big hit to Shenandoah County's budget, but I'm not understanding why we would want to do this now in the middle of the year. In the past, we've always relied on our auditors. Your comprehensive annual financial report should be what you follow. And that's what Stephanie waits on to prepare. Okay, here's the average daily population. They remove the depreciation. That came also from James. And then we come up with a number that should be returned to localities.
But, you know.
We have that as well. So we right or wrong, we've broken this into two pieces. One is, how much did you budget to use of the jail, and how much did you really use? That's what page 3 is trying to address. And you could say, well, we should have more current information. I mean, but page 3 is simply saying, we based our 18 budget on a certain assumption for usage, and we've gone back and updated the budget and shown what the actual usage was based on this 3-year rolling average, and it shifts the per diems. Okay, so that was part 1, and then part 2 begins on page 4. Page 4 came straight from Robinson Farmer Cox that said at the end of FY18, the year we just closed out, you had a surplus as an authority of $343,000.
This is your calculations.
Their calculation.
Their calculations.
Okay.
Okay, but
Which is
I went
different.
back and I looked at the audit. Go ahead.
And I'll say it's different than the 1,321,809 that we were presented with last.
Which is, well, and that's how it was calculated last year, and I followed suit and did the same this year. So, and that was listed on the budget last year, on the true-up last year, as from
And I
RFC.
think what was missing in that calculation was the principal paid in the year. I mean, we've got total revenues of 13.7. We've got total expenses of 14.6, and then we're making adjustments for the fact that principal had to be paid of $995, a couple small GASB, OPEB maybe, and then the depreciation.
The budget for the localities includes the debt payment, both principal and interest. So it is budgeted for.
Yes,
It is.
100%, but it doesn't, the principal does not show up in the operating revenues or operating expenses. The interest does. And so that's why you've got to bring the principal back in here as an adjustment. The principal is a, go ahead, Mitch.
The audit is done on a full accrual basis, which means it does not account for principal as an expense. So therefore, if we back out depreciation, we need to add back principal. And I talked through, I had the opportunity to talk to James, and he clarified that yes, that is correct. On the full accrual basis, principal is not counted as an expense item, and that's where he came up. That's where he went and did this calculation that you're looking at now to essentially account for, add back or back out non-cash or really paper items. So paper revenues, paper expenses, but not things that you all actually received or realized.
Okay, I know Mary comes in here, and I thought that Mary puts it in a cash basis, or is it vice versa?
And that is one of the journal entries that she has me do, and I asked her about it. Why are we moving the principal
Right.
out? Because she zeroes out the principal that we've, because throughout the year I add in the principal and interest payments, and she does zero them out as a journal entry. And I asked why, and she explained that it's an accounting measure that they have to move it.
So our agreement.
So depreciation expense depreciates the
That's
building.
just- Yeah, but that's not an expense, unless we're trying to share the depreciation of the building over time, that's not contemplated in the agreement. The agreement specifically says net operating expenses includes principal. And so our shares are supposed to be based on net operating expense. And by definition, that includes principal in the agreement.
I believe in the audit, the principal shows up as a reduction of a liability. It's more of a balance sheet item, so I think
That's right.
So it's not, they have you back out the principal.
Right, that it's moved.
And so its principal is real cash going out the door, but for accounting practices, they move it out of that worksheet that you're referencing. And I don't, as such, I don't believe it shows up in operating expenses. They handle it over on the balance sheet as a reduction of a liability. One of your liabilities being all that debt, and you're reducing it by $995,000 that year. But to truly understand the cash flow surplus of the authority, you've got to account for it.
So if the debt payment is included in the budget, which is both principal and interest, whether in an accounting rule they're backing it out, we've paid it in our 4 quarterly payments.
Absolutely.
So it is in the operating expenses.
But it's not in the 13, it's not in the 14, 16.
It may not be on this diagram,
If
but
you look
what
at
I
the-
guess I'm indicating is, it is budgeted for. We're making a quarterly payment to pay for that. So we've paid it.
It just needs to show the total expenses. That's what you're.
Yeah, if you look at our spreadsheet,
It's
for
in
our
there.
budget, the expense total for, would show a different number than the number here from the audit, because ours includes the debt service payment and the audit didn't. And so that's why it's added back in to figure out our share for the true-up.
For this calculation. But what I guess I'm pointing out is, it's in the budget.
Right, well, we need
We are
to-
making the payment.
So ultimately, we just need apples and apples. So we set a budget based on what's on this spreadsheet, and we set the true-up based on what's on this spreadsheet. You have to have that language conversion between audit book and spreadsheet, and that's what's happening on this page.
Yeah, is the 18 audit, do you have the 18 audit?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think when you look at these operating expenses, you've got interest and fiscal charges down here, but there is, for this presentation of the statement of revenues and expenses, the principal is backed out.
And not to get into deep with accounting, because interest is an expense. And they're not showing a principal payment in that manner, in that particular exhibit. I don't know how else to put it, but
Right. But this worksheet came from them, and I guess what we're trying to demonstrate here is money coming in on revenues, which are fairly straightforward, and then capturing the true cash outflows of the authority. So all of your operating expenses, your interest due on the bonds at $1.8 million, and also the $995 of principal, and then we back out depreciation because you didn't pay depreciation. It wasn't
The actual
cash.
shown on our budget spreadsheet for 18 is 13,422,977. That's what our spreadsheet shows. And that compares with the 13,362,894 on this page. I can't tell you why they're slightly different.
Yeah, I mean, these are all sourced to an audit, an exhibit, and a page, so I mean, it ties back.
So, I mean, it's essentially this, very close to the same number between what's in our budget spreadsheet and what's on this page. It's $40,000 different.
Or 60, yeah. 1342 to 1336.
14, yeah. Which could be the two Gatsby charges, basically.
I'm trying to find your 19 true up. Yeah, I have that handy.
Well, I can tell you, I'm not
Yeah, I got
interested
it.
in continuing what we did if it wasn't right. Just so we can continue what we did.
Try to move forward.
Well, if
We can have
last
a discussion
year,
of what happens with the past, but We need to do it correctly.
If last year where it was calculated that we were to be returned $922,000, then really that number should have been
Lower.
much lower.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if the I mean, I feel like the 660 had something to do with that. I disagree, and if we're gonna do it that way, I think we go back to square one and calculate every year.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that, I'm just saying we need to do it right.
Well, but what I thought we were doing was right, is I
Well,
guess my point.
Again, I'm not suggesting this is the absolute right way to do it. We were asked to sort of look at it, what might be a way to methodically work our way through this. So I think it's informational, and I believe it's consistent with what was contemplated in the documents, but others may disagree. But let me just finish my thought on that. So we had this, as I said, on page 3, which was recasting the actual expenses across the more accurate or timely usage rates. And then page 4 is, okay, and also we had a surplus of $343,000 in 18. And so what we've done on page 5 is pushed all of that together and allocated the surplus as well. And so you get down really to the bottom line, which says, all right, if you take page 3, which is recasting the FY18 budget based on the 3-year rolling average ending in 18, and you return the 18 surplus, that's what the math is down on lines 27 through 31.
So essentially, it's saying that Rappahannock and Warren would get a credit and that Shenandoah would owe.
That's what this is saying, that's right.
My concern with that, and I understand, what's been done, my concern with it is we don't need additional funding. Really what would be happening here is that Shenandoah would be paying it in to then return it to Warren because the numbers are different. But from my understanding on the agreement, we use the percentages to budget for that year. And this would kind of blow that out of the water. Like you'd be going back and adjusting it to the actual and then you would owe. So really, how do you budget for that? You know what I mean? Does that
Well, I
make
don't
sense?
think the authority would be getting any new money. You would just be paying each other back to get square, and the authority would get nothing.
Right, yeah, I understand. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Essentially, it would be Shenandoah bringing it in so that we could return it to Warren. My concern with that, and I mean, maybe this is wrong to be concerned, but I mean, for Shenandoah's purposes, like, how do you budget for that? That's why we use that 3-year rolling average based on previous years, is so that it can be budgeted for each year. How do you go back and ask for an additional $300,000 when that wasn't budgeted for? I mean, for any county, if that
Well,
happens for
that's my
any,
argument, to use the most current usage data when we do the budget and use the same period when we don't do a true-up based on that. If we use a cutoff right now for the FY20 budget of the turn of the year and just use that 3-year period and then be done with it.
But that's the purpose of why it being called a 3-year average, so we know how to budget properly.
Exactly.
So then next year's audit, I mean, Shenandoah County could be 45%. And let me just say, this is how we do it at the Juvenile Detention Center.
Yeah, we did it similarly at our juvenile detention center in Middle Peninsula.
So it works there.
But if you use that 3-year period from ending in December of 2018 for FY20, you don't have to do a usage true-up if you just use those 3 years. You will have to do a true-up based on the surplus if we come in under budget. We have to decide whether that's going to go to capital or be spread back to the parties based on that same percent. But you wouldn't have to update it again, the 3-year usage at the end of the term. That way you would know, you put your budget in, your number in your budget, it isn't changing. But now we use 2-year-old data and then we try to update it 2 years later and we wonder why the percentages shift.
But that's what I'm saying. I don't think it should be updated 2 years later. I think that we've agreed, and that's what the agreement is, that for FY19, we use the average from 15, 16, 17. And that's what it is. Going back and adjusting it after the fact blows up the whole budgeting process, in my opinion. My concern is changing it. So it's the same
The
concept.
service agreement says that's the way it's supposed to be done, though, right?
Yes, the service agreement says the payments from each member jurisdiction shall be adjusted at the end of each fiscal year based on the member jurisdiction's respective usage of the regional jail for the preceding 3 years.
And I bet we could probably go back and find in the minutes where we had discussions in the past and determined we would use the audit as the end of the fiscal year. And not just mid-year in July.
Well, the audit is through June 30th.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But we've already got our budgets adopted by our localities
Yeah, yeah.
by April.
I mean, the whole idea of the true-up is to go back. Stuff has changed, the percentages may have changed, go back and try to figure out. There's been a 5% swing from basically us to you guys in population. And when do you account for that? Do you do it 2 years later, 1 year later? And I guess what Brenda said, the service agreement says you do the previous 3 years.
Yeah.
And you do it every year.
And you do it every year.
Okay, that's right. And I just recall having discussions about that we would use the audit. That's when we would do it. And that, unfortunately, is December. So it happens in January, and then we adjust the fourth quarter payment.
Yeah.
Which
These are the audited numbers.
Yeah,
Correct.
the spread, I just did the math on this FY18, the budget spreadsheet. The difference between revenue and expenditure is 336, 259. So, I mean, that's 343, 286, same number. So the dollar amount, it's there. Just what 3-year period are you going to apply to that actual number from the audit? Are you going to use the previous 3 years, or are you going to skip a year and then use the previous 4 years back?
And we are making the adjustment in the current fiscal year in the fourth quarter payment.
Yeah.
Well, you can take, we don't have to make an adjustment, you can just get your check or pay a check. But we take the convenience, and the agreement says that it can be credited to your payment just to make it easier.
I mean, the way I read this, and I think these were all getting there, but what you were budgeted, each of you, an amount in FY18, and you each paid that amount, right? And then it says you're supposed to adjust that amount that you each paid based on the previous, at the average from the 3 previous years. So that would be 17, 16, and 15 for 18. And if your average, if you take what you paid and the population you had in 18, your actual population, and compare it to your average, if the division of the average versus the actual results in the excess you paid, you get a credit, and if you didn't pay enough, you have to pay in.
About how many bodies were in the bids.
Yeah, and the 3-year average is supposed to spread out any jump over 1 year. So, does what I say make sense?
So when I, again, look at page number 3, Davenport's work, under column A, at 16, we're at 6.09, 34.29, 59.62. And again, we skip the next year, which is 6.3, 37.98, 55.72. What do we do with that?
Well, if you applied this uniformly every year, this spreadsheet last year would have been FY15 and FY17. So you go back 12 months, if you did this the same way, last year you would have been truing up the 17 budget, right?
Yeah.
And you would have been, the budget would have been developed with FY15 rolling average, and you would be truing up the budget on 17 rolling average. So if you do this every year, you're taking each of those into account. It's when you change something or you skip a year or something perhaps where you can miss out or pay. But if you're doing it the same every year, last year would have been 15, 17, next year would have been 17, 19.
Yeah, the only question I have is I'm not sure that it says in the agreement how you calculate the budgeted per diem, whether you do that on a 3-year rolling average. So how you do that is up to you. You can say, we're gonna budget based on the actuals from last year, or we're gonna budget based on the rolling 3-year from last fiscal year or 2 fiscal years ago. But the true-up comparison to actual is the previous 3 rolling average on the 3 previous fiscal years. So I don't know how you budgeted each year going into it, whether you've actually done a 3-year rolling average.
So you're saying the true up should be on
What is the
FY 18, 17, and 16,
We're all
with
basically
18 ending last June, so you're true up for
Right
now.
now,
So obviously, we're building the 20 budget right now with these 18 numbers, 5.6, 26, 40.26, so we're
average
a year and a half, really, which is, it's got the skip a year issue. I do like your idea, Gary, of saying calendar year, because that gets us 6 months closer. So the only gap is between January 1 of this year to through June 30, right? And you just say, here's what we're basing the budget on.
Yeah, you may still have a true up,
But it should be lower.
you would think.
You're taking 6 months out of the equation.
You can go further in arrears into the budget on older data so that when you do the true-up, it's the same exact period. There is no true-up. The previous 3 years.
So what's our percentage right now, Shenandoah County? Like 44%? Huh? Only around 44%? So then we should use that for our fiscal year 20 budget and not 40.29, is that what we're saying?
If you took the calendar year numbers, I think you'd be close to that, right?
37.98 to 44%.
Through the 6 months in 2019, Mitch, at the bottom of page 1, that's the 3-year average, but on a 6-month basis, right?
Yeah.
That's right, yeah, so line 22 on page 1 represents all of fiscal 17, all of fiscal 18, and 6 months of fiscal 19, so December of 18.
Right. And if you want to see, like, what have you been for, look at line 8, I guess, Mitch, you could do those percentages for us. What's 156 divided by 359?
Yeah, hang on a second.
It's about 43%. So this represents about 43% of the total, and that's for the 6 months.
Yeah, if you want to write that down, just 6 months of 19 in order is 561, 43, 46, and 50, 93.
Whereas that's a 2.5 year rolling average at the very bottom.
It's a 3-year rolling average, assuming the 3rd year is going to stay exactly the same as it's been, I think.
Based on 2.5 years of data.
But it's weighting the 3rd year the same as the other 2.
So do the numbers change on the balance being returned to the localities? The 1 point,
Yeah, there's only $326,000 to give back to the locality. 336, 340, 343, depending on the number. That's all that's available. And from that, we can decide whether we want to take any of that, put it to capital. The other money it's not there, it's accounting charges. can't share depreciation and put depreciation into the capital fund.
Which we were
Well,
talking about
depreciation
last
is
month.
removed. Depreciation is removed.
Yeah, but
It
on the
comes
last
out
calculation-
2.3.
Right.
The first
Yeah.
calculation, it was,
I'm just not sure that the principal is removed from that worksheet. You know?
I don't know, that was what was done last year by RFC, and I just followed
Look at
suit
your-
using
You
this
all,
year.
Look
you
at
all
yours.
want to take action on this today?
My suggestion is send both the package of this stuff, the sheet here, let's pointedly ask RFC to go back
Okay.
and look and say, look, here's our service fee, are we calculating this correctly? Let's
Okay.
get everybody's input. I think next month still gives us time to get the fourth quarter payment out, you know, which is important. I think we just,
Does it give us time to adjust our budgets? I think so.
yeah, and I
Okay,
think
we
it's imperative, and I certainly appreciate Mary Beth, and the danger about going back, I mean, you guys have jumped 5% over the previous year, I don't know if that helps anyway, I'm just thinking, we've got to figure out how to move forward and make sure we're all on the same page with the calculation. Like you said, we were ready last month to split 1.3 and put half of it in capital, but if it's not really there, it's a bigger issue for us. So I think we've got to make sure that the calculation is correct. I like Gary's idea about maybe just, and I think the interpretation is there that we could use calendar year. That would get us a little bit closer to what the actuals are, so we'd have less variation for next year's true up. 6
You mean
months.
for the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could use yesterday's percentages.
Yeah, the budget is what, yeah, by using a farther back, rollback, you're either under budgeting or over budgeting, but you pay what you actually pay, and the 3-year rolling average is what it is. But whatever you can use a calendar year to estimate your budget, or like Ted said, the actual.
Russ, could you all go back and just, you could do a 3-year average comparison, but do it fiscal year and calendar year, just so we can see what those numbers look like for like the last 3 years. You've got the month to month, which helps you determine that, but I think that'd be helpful for us to have that discussion if we're gonna make a recommendation. But I think as much variation as we can take out of the process, and nobody gets kind of caught 12 months, 18 months, whatever down the road with a larger bill than they budgeted for.
I'm not against making a change if change is necessary. I'm not. But, you know, it works for juvenile detention. This is what I don't understand. This is what, from the very beginning, everyone agreed this is the 3-year average. Right when we started on day one, we brought inmates in here. And I guess that's where I'm trying to figure out, now we're going to change the process.
I don't know if we're, well, I think the only thing, if we say, what is the 3-year, if we change the calendar, yes, that would change. If the true-up process hasn't, in theory, changed, maybe the interpretation of how to compute the true-up. It's obviously, it's changed $1 million since last month. So we've got to make sure we're on the correct page with, and I think obviously our auditors need to agree with it.
The only thing that, and Stephanie and I have spoken, and this is a request, is because of the complexity of how this true-up can be calculated, could we put that back to the auditors that they actually make this calculation every year versus us?
I agree.
or devise a system that is
Yeah.
not complicated,
Either way, I
based on.
think it's
Agreed.
best that the auditor calculate this and not.
Even if we had to
Us.
pay a little bit extra to do that, absolutely.
I mean, that's my request, just because there's just, we're not accountants.
Yeah.
So I think it's best because of the dollars that are being, calculated, that best left to the experts is my request.
I agree.
Okay, thank you all. Anything else on that? Thank you, Ted.
Sure, you're
Appreciate it.
welcome.
Mitch, thank you. You still there?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So as it relates to our budget, at our next meeting, we would need to very carefully either individually decide what we're going to budget at home, regardless of what percentage number is on this page, because the true-up's going to get you sooner or later, it doesn't matter. Or change the percentages in the budget so that what we're building is different. So that they're more current.
Okay. Item number 7 is the RSW officer vacancy chart.
This was more of an informational request that was made by Mr. Curry. I guess, I don't know
I would just
if we want
say,
any kind of discussion from,
as we had meeting over meeting, I was sensing a trend, but we come and focus on this every month, and I wanted to see the trend and just as input to the budget and whether we need to do anything to alter the trend so that we can maintain staff and can maintain the opportunity for outside revenue. I don't like the way it looks. And we talked about this in the budget. I don't know if there's any.
some of what we can see is since, 2 years ago when we did the salary increase, we started getting a lot more applicants as vacancies went down. Now that we've kind of lost ground, it's starting to go back up again and the vacancies are increasing. So I think, to me, this is what this shows.
The market's plenty tight, so we'll find out how elastic it is with our.
If you're unemployed in this market, you've really got a problem. Everyone around here is hiring right now, so.
Yeah. All right, any other questions for Russell on that?
Just thanks for putting the data together. I think the chart alone shows you exactly what's happening.
Okay, item number 8 is discussion, Shenandoah University student documentary.
I had a request from Shenandoah University. I think she's a senior, or will be a senior this coming year. She wants to do a documentary as her senior project to highlight some of the inmate programs that are down here at RSW. I guess there's some, the reward of it is the positive, I guess, publicity you could get from that documentary, but there's also some risks, as Brendan has pointed out to me, that if you allow one group to do a documentary, then you've got to allow other groups to do documentaries inside your facilities. So I guess this is just really a request on what the authorities' wishes are, and do we want to allow these types of activities, I guess, to occur.
And let me just say that I think it's one scenario is where a student asks to interview inmates and wants to do a documentary and asks simply to interview staff and have them comment. That's simple enough. Anybody's, press can interview inmates if they go through the process. That's fine. And I don't think there's much beyond, we don't need to really do anything for that other than to go through the normal protocols of allowing access to inmates, assuming the inmate wants to do it. Sort of another concept whether we sort of participate and allow and facilitate back access to certain programs, and I think in that case we sort of need to have an agreement which talks about
Some
liability, review of the document. Do they have insurance? Is the inmates, are they signing a release because we can't force inmates to be a part of a documentary that they don't want to be? I'm a little, that's normally not the typical process, but the earlier one where they're just interviewing and they want to interview us and ask us how the program is, and then they do all their own research or make the documentary on their own. That's pretty straightforward for me. So I don't know if you want Russ to look into exactly what you want.
No, the intent is to interview inmates and staff and to actually film some of these programs happening. That's the intent.
So number 2 is what we're saying.
Yeah, number 2, and I think Russ is right. When you open the door to we're letting folks in, then when you get somebody else asking to come in and film and be part of a process, then
It sounds like I'm more comfortable with number 1, but that's just me. I don't know how the rest of the people.
I'm a risk-averse person.
I'm sorry?
I said I'm a risk-averse person.
So you don't like 1 or 2?
Right.
I would just follow council's recommendation.
why don't you find out sort of, does she have a proposal that the student has made in writing? Maybe you can get them to detail a proposal and let's look at that.
Okay.
Maybe she could go to Winchester City Jail or whatever's up there. She's from Shenandoah.
Is she trying to think of, maybe interested to see what NRDAPC is interested in doing?
I could.
Maybe we have better programs. I don't know.
I think that's it. I think a lot of our programs is what she's in there. She's done some other interviews here of staff and myself and different things.
Like I said, potentially they could have a lot of positive PR.
It could,
outside,
but,
you know.
yeah, I mean, you could have somebody that doesn't have the agency's best interest or the inmate's best interest wanting to film something in here, and it could be very bad for all parties, the inmates, us, you know, who knows?
As Gary said, that maybe they weren't going down that road.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
that tends to be my analysis. And when jails get approached, our clients about doing sort of Scared Straight or these other sort of programs that you see on TV, typically they shy away from them. I think it's for good reason.
I would tend to follow counsel's advice unless something comes up different.
Thank you.
The next item is a closed session. Do I hear a motion to go into
I
closed session?
move that we, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1, we go into closed session for the purpose of discussion of a personnel matter involving consideration of an employee grievance.
We need a subject.
Motion to second.
And we need a subject, the purpose and a subject.
It's an employee grievance.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion to second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.